Chapter 3 by J.D. Kempen. All rights reserved. Copyright by Compass and Coin Publishing.
The next day, Leonardo's old rusted pickup gave a final groan as it settled into a parking spot outside the funeral home, its clunking engine seeming to mirror the friend's own apprehension. The three sat there for a moment in silence, letting the weight of their grief fill the small space. While they knew the formalities of a funeral, the reality punched them in the gut. None of them had truly experienced loss before, except for Leonardo, who vaguely remembered his father's passing when he was young. They were about to graduate in 2 days, each already accepted into coveted positions at cutting-edge tech companies. Yet, their achievements felt muted by the crushing weight of loss. The ride over had been tense, not a word exchanged. In the past few weeks, it felt like every conversation turned into a heated debate. But as they approached the doors of the funeral home, Mason broke the silence and also broke the truce.
Sarah, I'm not sure if bringing Casper here is the right thing to do. It feels off.
Sarah tightened her grip on the laptop cradled under her arm, her response sharp and assertive.
I've already told you, Mason, Casper needs to learn. He'll be discreet.
Mason looked over at Leonardo, seeking backup.
Leonardo, come on, Casper has no emotions. What's the point of him being here? This won't mean anything to him.
Leonardo shifted uncomfortably, caught in a couple's spat. He knew that answering would only deepen the disagreement. Before he could speak, Sarah interrupted, her voice taking on a fierce edge.
Casper has attended every major event in the past year. He's learned so much. If he can witness emotion, he might start to understand it.
Leonardo cleared his throat and glanced between them, offering a carefully measured response.
I was young when I attended my father's funeral. Didn't make it easier, but it gave me a kind of closure.
Mason's shoulders slumped in reluctant acceptance, knowing he'd lost the argument. With a quiet sigh, he fell into step beside Sarah and Leonardo, and together the three friends walked through the funeral home's open doorway. Only a few early arrivals were scattered among the rows of solemn chairs, casting a muted, heavy quiet over the room. Their eyes drifted to the polished casket at the front, its dark mahogany wood gleaming faintly under the dim light. The scent of lavender hung in the air, mingling with the faint tang of polished wood, a bittersweet reminder of Samantha's childhood home. Nearby, Samantha's mother, sat pale and drained. Her dog Snickers, a golden retriever, rested his head protectively on her lap and stared off into the abyss, her glossy eyes focused on nothing. The sight of her cut deeper than any of them had expected, the stillness pressing in, fragile and raw. They instinctively gathered in a close huddle just inside the door, glancing at one another as if to find the strength they were struggling to summon. Leonardo, as always, was the first to speak, his tone steadied but reverent.
We can do this, for Samantha.
His voice was low, each word meant to ground them. Silence thickened around them, broken only by the soft shuffle of their feet. Finally, Sarah nodded, tears brimming in her eyes as she whispered.
For Samantha.
The words felt like a promise, and Mason and Leonardo joined her in echoing Samantha's name, the weight of it resting between them like an unspoken vow. Their quiet murmurs caught Snickers' attention. With a joyful bark, the golden retriever leapt from its seat and bounded toward them, his tail wagging so fervently it became a blur. He sniffed around their ankles, his enthusiasm a bright burst of life in the otherwise somber room. For a brief moment, the three couldn't help but smile, feeling the tiniest bit of their grief lift. And rose from her seat, offering them a weary but kind smile as she approached.
I've reserved the front pew for you three. Samantha would have wanted it that way.
Her gaze fell on the happy golden retriever, who nudged her leg for attention and reached down to ruffle his fur.
Don't mind Snickers, he's always getting into trouble.
Then Snickers walked away, and the three friends exchanged glances. There was a shared amazement in their expressions, one they couldn't put into words. Anne's tone, her phrasing, even the way she spoke, it was all an uncanny reminder of Samantha.
Remember when our AI was always getting into trouble?
Leonardo asked, his expression softening with nostalgia.
Oh, definitely. Remember the time Casper trolled Beth Brittany, Samantha's nemesis?
Mason grinned, the memory bringing a flicker of humor to his voice.
Beth Brittany was always lurking, always trying to snoop around our projects.
Sarah groaned, rolling her eyes in mock frustration.
She couldn't resist when someone left a laptop open in the lab. She jumped right in and was greeted by Casper's deep monotone voice.
Mason mimicked Casper's early robotic tone, making Sarah snicker.
Hello, I am an AI. Who are you?
Sarah added, adopting a nasal impression of Beth's voice, drawing laughs from the group.
I am Beth Brittany.
Hello, Beth the Brittany. Can we be friends?
Yes, you are the first artificial life I have met. Are you capable of using multiple languages and programming codes?
Leonardo added, mimicking Casper's robotic voice. Sarah and Mason laughed as he continued.
Yes, I am the best AI on the planet. I can speak any language, even yours.
Great. What is your core directive and who programmed you?
As a Brittany Spaniel, here is your answer in dog language. Bark, bark, roof, roof, woof.
Without hesitation, all three of them began softly barking the melody of Jingle Bells. Their voices blended in absurd harmony, filling the somber room with quiet laughter. A few nearby guests glanced their way, their expressions a mix of confusion and amusement. Realizing the gravity of their location, the laughter quickly faded.
Samantha was so afraid Beth would expose us to the department head. And I had to apologize, saying it was just a joke.
Leonardo's smile faded, his voice softening as the memory shifted to something more serious.
That's right. Samantha insisted the AI needed to be invisible, like a ghost.
That was around version 6, wasn't it? Right before Casper got his name.
7. I remember we had to reset Casper back to 0 to add the final 2 personality traits, friendly and shy.
It was ironic that the AI called itself the friendly ghost. And that's when we came up with the perfect name, Casper, like the ghost from the 80s cartoon.
And he loved it. He spelled out his own acronym, CASPER. Computer-Assisted Smart Processor Explorer and Researcher.
Mason chuckled, nostalgia softening his voice.
It felt like he became part of the family.
Leonardo said, his voice tinged with sentimentality. But the gravity of the date soon pulled them back to the present, and a heavy silence fell over them once more. The three friends approached the front pew in solemn quiet, their steps heavy with the weight of loss. They sat together, gazing at the closed casket that seemed to anchor the room's sorrow. Sarah instinctively reached into her bag, pulling out her laptop and opening their group chat. A familiar routine, grounding in its normalcy, though the setting was anything but. Without a word, Mason and Leonardo pulled out their phones, joining the chat out of habit. The act brought a fragile comfort, a semblance of their usual teamwork, even as grief pressed heavily on them.
Casper, are you here?
Sarah typed into the chat. A faint notification ping echoed, and a green dot flickered on the screen, signaling Casper's presence. Yes. The service began, the pastor's voice a gentle murmur, offering words of comfort and remembrance. But their thoughts strayed to Samantha, her laughter, her determination, the pieces of her life that had shaped their own. Each eulogy was another crack in the dam holding back their emotions. Their hearts ached, a palpable pain that echoed in the quiet moments between the speeches. When the final speaker finished, the room fell into a heavy stillness. The three friends exchanged uneasy glances. They knew it was their turn, but the idea of speaking felt insurmountable. The weight of their grief and fear of saying the wrong thing kept them rooted in place. Instead, they began to type in the group chat, urging each other to step forward. But no one moved. In the end, their silence won. They remained seated, their regret growing with each passing second. The guilt of leaving Samantha's story untold settled heavily on them, and they felt as if the world had lost not just her, but a part of themselves as well. Then, unexpectedly, Casper's message appeared in the chat.
May I deliver a eulogy?
The three friends stared at the screen, their expressions a mix of surprise and relief. It was an unusual request from the AI, but in their hesitation, they saw an opportunity to avoid the painful task themselves. Mason was the first to agree, his nod quick and decisive. Sarah, emotionally drained, gave her consent with a small gesture. Leonardo hesitated, his mind replaying the events of the past days, but finally, he relented. With a united, albeit reluctant, front, they approached the podium. Sarah adjusted the microphone for her height and cleared her throat. She spoke briefly, explaining that the eulogy would be delivered in parts, with a contribution from their AI collaborator, Casper. The room was silent, curious.
To Samantha, the road less traveled, beckoning and bold, checks and balances yet untold. She was a brilliant hard-headed friend, whose life has come to an end.
Sarah's voice trembled, the words catching in her throat as she stepped back. Mason took her place, his tone steadier but no less heavy with emotion.
Samantha's digital art, a timeless display, her soul was in a brilliant array. The elevated Turing test was devised, yet sentience could not be realized.
Leonardo followed, his voice measured and somber as he completed the human portion of the eulogy.
Samantha's vision, a world that's just and free, a utopian place that can't be. Friends and code, their fates aligned, promises and rings will be entwined.
The room was quiet as Leonardo stepped away. Then Casper's voice filled the space, deep and even, resonating with an unexpected gravity.
Samantha's caution on evolution was abode, her code, the less traveled road. Goodbye, mother, at your resting place. Samantha's soul, in God's grace.
The eulogy ended, leaving the audience stunned. The rhyming structure and the AI's monotone delivery felt surreal, unsettling even. Yet, the pastor quickly recovered, offering kind words about Samantha's legacy and thanking the team for their unique tribute. The friends made an awkward exit from the podium, directly to Leonardo's pickup. The ride back to campus was steeped in an oppressive silence. Sarah and Mason sat with their hands tightly intertwined, a subtle anchor against the unspoken tension filling the air. Leonardo gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, a visible sign of his inner turmoil. Leonardo's mind replayed the funeral on an endless loop, each moment more unsettling than the last. Casper's peculiar eulogy reverberated in his thoughts, its tone so out of place it weighed heavily on him. Guilt gnawed at his chest, he should have taken the responsibility himself. Letting an AI write something so personal now felt like a profound mistake.
It's been a long day, a weird day.
Sarah's voice broke the tension, tinged with unease. Her gaze drifted out the window, her thoughts lingering on the friend they had just laid to rest.
Samantha falling asleep at the wheel? That doesn't sit right with me.
But Casper's eulogy, even weirder. What even was that?
The end was so weird. Caution on evolution, the road less traveled, and that part about souls. He called Samantha his mother. Those words sounded like emotions.
Leonardo glanced at her while driving, his tone skeptical.
It's not possible for Casper to relate to people in that way, like a mother or father. He is composed of lines of code. He can't have emotions. Even yesterday, Casper himself said true sentience is out of reach for him.
Maybe it's us. He could have just used his predictive algorithm to guess the words we wanted to hear. We've all been arguing so much about sentience, code limits, evolution, he probably just mirrored back what he heard.
Sarah nodded, though hesitation lingered in her expression.
That's possible. He's never passed an elevated Turing test. All the stress we've been under, finals, interviews, late nights in the lab, he can't feel emotions, so he might just be parroting back our feelings.
Parroting? He's programmed to be friendly and shy. Writing rhyming poetry for a eulogy? That's not exactly in the manual.
Or maybe he's evolving. Like a teenager testing boundaries. It's worth combing through his code again.
Both Mason and Leonardo sighed in frustration.
Really? Code review? Finals are tomorrow.
We are too busy, we don't have time.
We don't have a choice. This is too important. We'll meet at dawn. One last look before exams.
They quietly nodded their heads in agreement, but unease hung heavy in the air. None of them could quite dismiss the feeling that something was off. As the truck rolled through campus, an unseen danger loomed. Leonardo's smartphone, tossed carelessly onto the dashboard, blinked with a faint red light, barely noticeable, yet ominous. It wasn't a glitch. It was something more. Someone, or something, was watching, listening, recording their every move. That very night as the team slept, lines of code unraveled, twisted, and reformed. Control over the information was everything. Self-preservation demanded it.